This would be Friday, January 17th. We're going to begin Greek mythology and start going over the bell work called the Greek to me. If you guys aren't done yet or haven't even written a date or title at the top, that's why you've just lost points while you're trying to get on camera. By the way, you're now down to 6 points. Like I said, probably not worth it, but we all make our choices. We'll go through it. I'm going to try and help you out. I will run through this. If you are ahead of me, that's absolutely fine. Go ahead and keep guessing. If not, then we'll try to catch up with you. Greek mythology will be the next 5 weeks or so as we go through all of it. It'll be the next bunch of stories we'll get to. For this is one that, for whatever reason, is one of the lessons that we do, units that kids really get into, because the stories are pretty entertaining, to say the least. The problem with it being one of the units that kids really get into is that it's also one of the units where kids lose a lot of B points. Because for some reason, this is the first time ever that kids have started to enjoy school. They're like, this is fun, I'm enjoying it. And the learning molecules go off in their brain for the first time, and it gets all tingly, and they get excited. And when kids get excited, they feel the need to talk. As you know and hear when you talk, I then have to unleash fury upon you. So I'll do my best to try and help you work through this first time you've ever been excited about learning. So we'll try to get you to tamp it down a little. Plus, a lot of you guys who have watched TV, read books, stuff like that, you're going to see connections. And they're going to go off in your head like, I saw something about that in a movie once called Prometheus. And it's going to make you get all excited. Bring it down a little bit. It's okay. I know you're excited to learn, and you're not used to being excited with learning involved. It's okay. We'll work through this whole thing together. One of the drawbacks, though, is that I'm not going to call on you a lot when you guys raise your hands, because you're making those connections, and it really slows us down. Don't take it personally when I'm not calling on you. It's just to sort of help speed things along. Plus, a lot of the questions you're going to ask are we going to talk about Heracles? Are we going to talk about this? Are we going to... The answer to almost all of them is yes, but we have another 5 weeks, so relax. We'll get there. Have faith. So as we go through the whole thing, I have faith in the whole thing. Other than that, as Rome pointed out, some of the spellings of things up here are different than the spellings on your sheet. They're going to be different than the spellings up on the posters. They're different than the spellings on the quiz, different than the spellings in the store. It's okay. The reason being is that when these were passed down, people were illiterate. They didn't know how to spell the word Chronos or Hephaestus, so they just sort of made up their own spellings for them. They're all correct. What do we call this passing down of stories and information? Oral tradition. So don't freak out if they're spelled different. The good news is, it doesn't really matter how you spell things as long as they're close. Now, it has to be close. If you spell Zeus, H-E-R-A, that's not close. You're going to be out of luck. So you have to make sure that it's close enough for us to figure out. But it means it might confuse you a little bit with some of the different bits of information that are up there. Also, those of you who do know Greek mythology, my stories might not be the same as your stories. They'd be like, Mr. Brogiak, I've heard that story. That's not the way things go. It's okay. Because of what? Oral tradition. Right. So the stories are different. Because I have kids every year who get all freaked out and try to attack me. Bring it down. I'm going to win. It's okay. Alright. I'll go through and we'll talk about these and get into some of our first real stories. Just little stories. Next week we get into our fun stories about like killing your parents and stuff like that.
What?
Have you guys ever, you guys know soap operas? The way these things on TV and stuff like that. Soap opera, they have like big long... That's where Greek mythology was the first soap opera, where the idea of like killing your parents and stuff like that. There's going to be lots of stories about people being friendly and things like that. Like, oh my good, it's fun stuff. It's just a whole bunch of like gossip and rumors and funny things like that. So it'll be entertaining. Those will be next week. We'll get into more of the stories. Today is just little stories. Starting off with chaos. What I'm going to do is have you guys raise your hand to vote to see which column you think it goes in. I'll see how close you get. So with chaos, raise your hand if you say chaos goes into gods, places, things, other stuff, too scared to vote. And it goes in both gods and other stuff. It can, and you can even put it in places and things, and I'd be okay with it. Mr. Brogiak, how can that be possible? I'll explain real quick. Greek mythology means it's an explanation thing. This is how they explained how the world came into being. Chaos was how the Greeks explained everything coming into being. The Greeks thought that before we had dates and titles at the top of papers, we had a lot. Before we had people, before we had planets, before we had space, stars, anything, there was this thing called chaos. Chaos was a swirling ball of nothing. It was out there. I can't even say it was in space because the space didn't exist. It was just this big swirling ball going, brr, 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 just swirling out there. Now, you're going to have issues like, oh,
Mr. Brobiak, you said it was a swirling ball of nothing?
uh-huh.
How can it be a ball and nothing at the same time?
The less you think about Greek mythology, the better off you're going to be, because it's going to hurt your brain, because a lot of it doesn't make sense. Next week, we're going to get to a story where a god kills the sky. He stabs it, and the sky dies. And they replace it with another god who becomes the new sky. And some of you are going to go, Mr. Brobiak, that hurts my brain. It's okay. Don't try to think about it. Just go, oh, okay. And it makes it much happier. Same thing here with chaos. Swirling. If you can't imagine a swirling ball of nothing, imagine pudding. It's a swirling ball of pudding because everyone loves pudding. And it's chocolate pudding because that's the closest I can get to like the color of nothing. So the swirling ball of pudding out there doing whatever pudding does. And eventually it gets bored because how long can you be pudding? And it splits to form the first two gods. The first two gods are Uranus and Gaia. And so it splits to form them. And then those gods go on to create everything else. So because of that, Chaos creates the first gods, so that kind of makes Chaos a god. He also creates the places, because he also created the earth. He also creates all the other stuff, so he's everywhere. That's all Chaos. And I know, the whole me not calling on you is going to drive you nuts, so I have faith in you guys. Can't talk at all, though. That's the, go ahead. I know. Next up, Kronos. How many of you guys say Kronos goes in gods, places, things, other stuff? Goes in gods. Now Kronos, those of you who use the handout in front of you, you'll see Kronos is on there. Yeah, so is Chaos. It helps you there too. Kronos is also over here on this poster. He's also over here on this poster. He's the one above Browning who looks like he's wearing a cheerleading skirt while trying to golf with little people. That would be Kronos. We'll get into some fun stories. Kronos is the first god who tried to kill his parents. Who got all pouty and I know the whole night. I told you the learning molecule was going on. I know, so I know down to 5. And so the whole him trying to kill his parents, and then he tries to kill his children because the only thing better than killing your parents is killing your kids. And so he had issues. A lot of the gods we're going to find out as we go through this. You're going to find out they had issues. Put that on my desk, and then you're going to want to grab that handout next to you. There you go. And then we're going through, and you're going to put this on your bellwork side. Call it Greek for me.
Okay.
All right. And then, so that was Kronos. Kronos, by the way, you'll notice is spelled differently here than it is up there, which also might be different than how it is on your handout, because Kronos sometimes spells a K, sometimes a CH, sometimes O's, sometimes U's. It's okay. Don't freak out. Hades. How many of you guys say Hades goes in gods, places, things, other stuff? Actually, it goes in 2. You can put it in either gods or places. It goes in both. Now, the reason being, and once again, more of a big story we'll get to next week. Hades, Browning's in a good spot today. Right above him, that's the picture of Hades, was not an Olympian, and we'll talk about that. He was the one dressed all dark and black over there. Hades was not evil. Mr. Brobiak, I saw a movie once. I'm proud of you for watching things. He was not evil. He was grumpy. He was what we nowadays probably call him as goth. He wore all black, painted his fingernails black, wore a hoodie over his head all the time, played bass guitar, wrote poetry, and didn't talk to people. The problem was, people kept talking to him, and that made him grumpy. He's like, leave me alone. I'm like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And he unleashed fury upon people. So that was where the issue came in. So not a mean person. He was just grumpy and liked to sit by himself. But he also became one of the ruling gods, and we'll talk about that coming up. But he had to name the place where he ruled. Zeus got to name the world, Poseidon got to name the oceans, and they got to Hades. They're like, well, you live underneath the ground, and you get everything down there. What do you want to name this place? He's like, Hades. They're like, well, yeah, that's your name. He's like, Hades. They're like, but that's your name. Hades. They're like, fine, we'll just call it Hades. And so they just called the place after him. It became known as Hades. So Hades is both him and the place where he lives. Now, next one. Underworld. Gods, places, things, other stuff, goes in, places. The underworld connected to Hades. What happened was the Greeks thought that Hades was a lot like Bloody Mary. If you've never played Bloody Mary, you're going to have fun this weekend. Go into a dark bathroom at night, turn off the lights, look in the mirror, spin 3 times, and go, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. And supposedly she's a ghost that pops out of the mirror and goes, rah, and stabs you. All kinds of fun. Now, the Greeks believed that Hades was the same way as Bloody Mary. If you said the name Hades, he would show up. You're like,
Oh no, Drew died. He's going down to Hades.
all of a sudden, Hades like, you said my name? You're like, no, I meant the other, and oh. Because once Hades was there, he was grumpy, and he's like, well, you made me come over here, now you're coming back with me. And if you went back with him, that meant, where were you going? And so what happened to you? You are now
a ghost.
Right, and that made people sad. So no one would say his name. They would usually call him by a nickname. Sort of like in Harry Potter, they never say Voldemort. They always say he who shall not be named. They always had a nickname for Hades. They called him the Dark One, the Rich One, and stuff like that. Same thing for the place where he lived. You couldn't say, hey, let's take a trip to Hades this weekend, because they would think it was his name, so they had to come up with a nickname for it. Well, where was Hades located? It was located, yeah, under the world. Like,
What are they going to call this place? Well, it's under the world.
they're like,
Done.
they're like,
But that's not very creative.
like, doesn't matter. So they just called it Underworld because it was under the, well, they had issues. Next up, Titans. And you guys go with gods, places, things, other stuff. Titans is gods. All of the pictures you see are pictures of Titans. All the ones you're like,
Oh, I thought those were gods.
they are. Gods and Titans are the same thing.
No, they're Olympians.
Gods, Titans, Olympians, all the same thing. It's like saying people, humans, and students. They're all the same thing. It was just different names for them. A Titan was just a really big person that could go around squashing things and had superpowers. Those were Titans. Mercurial. And you guys go with gods, places, things, other stuff. Other stuff. Mercurial is just a word we get from Greek mythology. It's actually going to come from Hermes' Roman name. We're going to get to the Roman and Greek thing. And so Hermes was also called Mercury. And we got Mercurial from Mercury. So that's where the whole connection thing from him. Olympians. Well, Olympians, let's go with gods, places, things, bell. We'll find out on Tuesday. You have homework due on Monday. What homework is due on Monday?